we have with us good friend of the show, Myriam Joire. Myriam, thank you again for coming on to the Before You Buy.
Father. How are you?
I'm good. It's summertime, and summertime means that you know, we're going to be taking a lot of pictures on our vacation.
We all took our vacation, so we're back now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And speaking of vacation, you have yourself a nice little gadget. Tell me about this.
Yeah, so this is the Fujifilm X30. It's a relatively recent, recently launched Fujifilm top-of-the-line point-and-shoot camera. It's designed for people who love photography, like me, but don't want to lug around a DSLR, for example, and want something a little better than their phones. Even though phones like the iPhone 6 and the G4 and the GS6 today are really good, this just cranks it up a notch.
I wanted to ask you about that because, I mean, you're a phone person.
Yeah.
You get all the best phones, all the greatest phones, and you get to play, especially with phones that have beautiful cameras, and yet you felt compelled to bring a point and shoot along with you on your vacation.
So the reason for that, I went to Iceland, and you've got some pictures here that we can show, but the reason for that is the interface, right? Like this camera has a bunch of knobs everywhere in all the right places that if you're like a very capable photographer, you can exploit. So you can shoot full manual, you know, I can have my finger rest on this little wheel for shutter speed, this ring here for aperture. It feels like an analog camera from back in the day. Let me go through some of these things because I think that's important. Regardless of what this camera does and how new it is, there's a crop of cameras out there, high-end point-and-shoots, they're designed for kind of professional photographers, and they have these type of controls. So, you know, first of all, you take out the lens cap, you twist it on.
Oh, okay.
And then you have a 4-time optical zoom. Again, optical zoom is something you can't get on a phone camera today, not commonly anyway. And it really does, you know, make for a better zoom. Here's a dedicated switch for manual focus, continuous focus, and single shot focus, which is, you know, something you'd find on normally like a Canon or a Nikon.
Right.
Here you have a button that lets you switch what mode this programmable dial does. So it could be manual focus, it could be, you know, ISO speed, aperture, whatever you want.
I like that.
Here's your shooting modes.
This looks like an old traditional shooter's camera where you've got your speed and all your modes right up at the top.
Right, and Fuji and a bunch of other companies have kind of gone back on this retro look, but because the control and the user interface is really something you can't replicate with modern digital technology. So they wanted to bring that back. And so you have, this is a mode selector, you know, like program, shutter speed, aperture priority, manual, panorama, all that. What's cool about this camera is that it has a traditional hot shoe, so you can mount a whole bunch of accessories, flashes, and other things. It does have a built-in flash as well that you can fire off if you'd like. Dedicated EV button, so that, like as you can see in the viewfinder, changes the brightness of the shots in real time. And then you have a really nice kind of mechanical feeling shutter key here. I've already mentioned this button here lets you adjust, you can program it as well, and it's also got a click function on it. So basically, without having to look at the camera or the interface, because there's an electronic viewfinder as well, you can, look at me right now, I'll show you. You can go like this, and it automatically switches from the LCD in the back to this high-resolution OLED viewfinder, and lets me shoot like a pro, really frame my shot. I can see all the parameters and adjust them. So this is the kind of experience you cannot replicate.
Is that a through the lens or is that another screen?
No, this is another screen.
It's another screen, okay.
Yeah. So it's not a reflex like through the lens, and it's not a optical viewfinder that you'd find on the older point and shoots where you have a hole here, but that framing doesn't match the framing of your shot. This actually reflects what the sensor is seeing, including, you know, the brightness of it and everything. So it's very accurate if you're shooting. So that's in a nutshell what this user experience is optimized for.
So it has a lot of the features that I might expect out of a DSLR.
Exactly.
Like, for example, I can make the front the focus ring, and I can use the back wheel for my aperture, which is all great, but now the big question, what about quality? So is it significantly better than what I get from a camera? It is significantly
better than what you get from your smartphone, even the best smartphones.
Oh, that's nice.
It's probably at the same level as an entry-level DSLR, this one.
Oh, okay.
So it's a 12-megapixel sensor with really, really good, you know, large sensor. It's a little smaller than APS-C. I think it's you know, kind of similar to the micro four thirds type size sensor.
Okay.
And it's got like optical image stabilization. I think it's a 5-axis system.
like that.
It's
That
really
nice,
high end.
nice
You can see the
finite depth
bokeh
of
here.
field.
So f over 2.0 is the lens, and if you're on maximum zoom, you only drop to f over 2.8, which means you're still gathering a
Quality
lot of
optics.
light. A lot of lenses, when you zoom in, you lose some of the f-stops, and sometimes quite a bit. So this is a big deal.
I see these are outdoor photos, and most cameras will look beautiful outdoors.
If you go back a bit, Brian, there is some photos in New York at night. So go back in time.
This one?
Like that one, the one before.
Oh.
So
Okay,
this is shot
yeah.
at ISO 800. I often, like, I wanted to get the guy. You see the guy? He gives me a dirty look there, and I got him. And I mean, you have to understand, this was not shot like preparing my shot. This was like this. I'll show you, right? It was like literally, I'm walking around, and as I'm walking, I'm seeing the shot, right? And I go like this. Done. That you can't do with a camera phone.
Yeah, that's how I have a point
And
of
that
view.
is why it's so powerful to have
Actually,
such
he looks kind of like Brian. That's like a cranky hippo face there.
Is it?
So you shot that ISO 800. I don't see a whole lot of grain. That's a clean
actually,
sensor.
this camera can do ISO 1600 without any significant visible noise, in my opinion. So that's it's a level. It's a whole different level of performance. Other things you should know about this particular camera: it has Wi-Fi, so you can remote control from your smartphone. You can use your smartphone as a GPS receiver to geotag your photos. You can transfer the photos to your smartphone and upload them full res if you want that way, like Instagram or Flickr or whatever. It has a micro USB, and it charges over micro USB, which is great. It has HDMI as well. A microphone input, so you can actually put a lav on this and do
raw?
video recording. Of course it does
It
raw.
does raw, okay. And all the different modes. So it's
Yes.
going to do panorama, it's
Yeah.
going to do time lapse.
It doesn't do HDR in the camera. It does the bracketing, so it'll take 3 shots in a row. You set the settings you want, and then you have to export to Photoshop to do that, or to Lightroom or whatever. It has a very, very large battery that can be charged through the micro USB. One of the drawbacks of this camera, but I think it's because more and more cameras nowadays have charging over USB, which is a new thing for cameras, is that it doesn't come with a dedicated power charger, one that you plug in the wall and slide the battery in. So you can buy that as an accessory, but out of the box it only comes with a micro USB
So you should
charger.
charge it in phone.
But it charges from like my MacBook, no problem. And the battery life on this thing was insane. I never got to less than half. And that was charging every 2 or 3 days on my trip, and I was taking a ton of pictures.
What's the price on something like this?
This is a $500 camera, street price, like I think $488 on Amazon. It lists for $599. You're not going to find it. Thankfully, it's less than $500 most places, but it's pretty new, so it still commands a bit of a premium. As I said, another thing I just want to show quickly, this is obviously the viewfinder here, the LCDs are articulated, so you can, do shots like this, or like you at a concert, you can do shots like this. So it's nice to have the electronic viewfinder, but having a regular LCD is still a really nice thing to have, right? Of course, a tripod mount, all the things you'd expect. It's also somewhat dust and humidity proof, so I was able to shoot behind.
That's a big one.
Behind waterfalls in Iceland, shoot through the waterfall, without the water going on the camera.
Were you able to come out of an air-conditioned car into the environment without it just fogging over?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So you get some stuff from using a dedicated camera over your camera phone, and this gives you that at a reasonable price without going all out. Because my belief is that you shouldn't buy an entry-level DSLR. You're way better served by something like this. It'll teach you all the things you need to learn about photography. DSLR, go high-end. That's the only way to go, full frame. This is a buy for me. It's the kind of the perfect storm of features.
Wait, before we get there, though, you got to break it down. So the people who might be looking at something like this over, say, just their phone camera or maybe a DSLR, what would be the pros and the cons?
I would say that the idea behind using this camera is if you are interested in photography as a hobby, you want to learn, but you want to start maybe in full auto mode where it does it all for you like your camera phone would, and slowly you're going to pick up these skills and try and experiment. This has everything. And then if you are a pro and you want to carry something that's not the size of your Nikon or Canon and still get those low light shots that are, candid, you can get those with this camera. If you go forward a little bit in the photo stream, Brian, there's some pictures of me in a cave with a bunch of people, and you'll see the incredible low light performance. This is just lit by the
That's very nice.
headlights, okay? And I think I set it to ISO 1600 for
That's
this.
something I would expect only be able to get
There's
with a
no
DSLR.
way you can do this.
Yeah. You wouldn't
with
get that on a
today,
phone.
right? You can see the motion from them walking up, but the stairs are clear, and that's the whole point. So if you're a professional or you're really a seasoned photographer, this is something you can still potentially put in a pocket or under a hoodie, you know, to protect. And so the things I love about it is the electronic viewfinder, the Wi-Fi connectivity, the manual controls that are configurable. Things I don't like about it, doesn't come with a dedicated battery charger. And no built-in HDR. You actually have to process outside. But panorama is processed in the camera, which is, there's a few of them in there. And it's interesting that they chose to do the panorama but not the HDR. Another maybe small minus is the GPS. There's no GPS, so you need to use your phone's GPS over Wi-Fi to get the tagging. And honestly, the setup on that is you're not going to use it. The reality is it's just a pain. So, you know, I think it's a buy. I think this is one of the best. I've got a few point and shoots. I've got the RX100, which is kind of Sony's high-end point and shoot that everybody talks about as the reference in this field. And honestly, I think in many ways it's as good, if not better.
There you have it. It's a buy for the Fujifilm X30 from Myriam Joire. Now, Myriam, they can find you all over the Twit TV network. You're here on Before You Buy. You regularly guest on All About Android.
Correct.
But where else can they find you?
On Twitter, I'm Tankerl without the vowels. It's at TNKGRL. My blog is tankerl.com, TNKGRL.com. You know, you'll find me on the Twitterverse and the Facebook universe and the Google Plus and all that. And
all the tubes.
Yeah, all the tubes.
All over the tubes.
And of course, here on Twit.
There you go. If you're looking for a camera for this summer's travels, this might be the thing to fill the gap between your phone and your DSLR.